Chapter 49. Lucius Malfoy's Bright Idea. The other schools arrived, and Hagrid wore the most tremendous suit. They ended up having lunch with Hagrid, though they didn't eat much. Hagrid had made what he said was a beef casserole, but after Hermione unearthed a large talon in hers, she, Harry, and Ron rather lost their appetites. However, they enjoyed themselves trying to make Hagrid tell them what the tasks in the tournament were going to be, speculating which of the entrants were likely to be selected as champions, and wondering whether Fred and George were beardless yet. A light rain had started to fall by mid-afternoon. It was very cozy sitting by the fire, listening to the gentle patter of the drops on the window, watching Hagrid darning his socks and arguing with Hermione about house elves, for he flatly refused to join SPEW. When she showed him her badges, "It'd be doing an unkindness, Hermione," he said gravely, threading a massive bone needle with thick yellow yarn. "It's in their nature to look after humans, that's what they like see. Ye'd be mackin', unhappy to take away their work, and in suitin', if ye tried to pay That may be the case for some house elves," Hermione said with tremendous dignity, "but my survey shows that even house elves who consider themselves to have a good master have unmet needs that wizards do not consider. House elves at Hogwarts, for instance, feel that the school having a caretaker is taking away valuable work from them, and that the school should consider admitting more students so that they have more to do. It may not be wages," she added with a sniff, "but it is certainly elvish welfare. And not all house elves object to the idea of wages, either, once I explained it to them." Harry and Ron watched this speech with some bemusement, and Harry was rather worried he'd created a monster. The fire in the goblet had just turned red again. Sparks were flying out of it. A long flame shot suddenly into the air, and borne upon it was another piece of parchment. Automatically, it seemed, Dumbledore reached out a long hand and seized the parchment. He held it out and stared at the name written upon it. There was a long pause, during which Dumbledore stared at the slip in his hands, and everyone in the room stared at Dumbledore. And then Dumbledore cleared his throat and read out, "Harry Potter." The discussion about his nomination was awful, and Snape was dead silent throughout. Harry was attempting to think, and nothing was really coming of it. It only really got worse from there, his thoughts buzzing and disorganized, everyone by turns celebratory and suspicious. "Listen," said Harry, "I didn't put my name in that goblet. Someone else must have done it." Ron raised his eyebrows. "What would they do that for?" "I dunno," said Harry. "I think I'll talk to Professor Snape about it," he added. "That's right," said Ron, something ugly lurking in his tone. "You're best friends with Slytherins now, aren't you?" Harry had been having such agogia. "Well," Professor Snape asked, without elaboration. At this point in their relationship, Harry understood the question. "Someone's trying to kill me again. You will have to face the challenges alone. There is no way around that." Great, Harry thought. Durmstrang and Beauxbaxton will cheat at every opportunity. I expect you to do the same. Professor. Obviously, you will not be caught. Will you help at all? Professor Dumbledore wants his professors to remain neutral. You will not let this distract you from your course of study in potions, Mr. Potter. I am beginning to agree with your theory that your life will never wait until someone is not trying to kill you. He would have been looking forward to seeing Hagrid under normal circumstances, but care of magical creatures meant seeing the Slytherins too, the first time he would come face to face with them since becoming champion. Predictably, Malfoy arrived at Hagrid's cabin with his familiar sneer firmly in place. "Ah, look, boys, it's the champion," he said to Crabbe and Goyle the moment he got within earshot of Harry. "Got your autograph books? Better get a signature now, because I doubt he's going to be around much longer. Half the Triwizard champions have died. How long do you reckon you're going to last, Potter? 10 minutes into the first task's my bet." Harry punched him in the face and got tackled by Goyle in the bargain. Hagrid hauled them off each other and assigned them all detention together with a dreadful look on his face. Sorry, Hagrid, Harry muttered. He wished he and Ron were talking, because usually he and Ron held each other back from actually attacking Malfoy. Detention involved mucking out the stables of the Beaubaxton horses. Hagrid didn't stay to supervise. Harry did his very best not to breathe. Goyle tripped Harry into the muck. Harry tackled Golento the muck. Both of you stop it, hissed Draco, standing well back from their filthy fight rolling around the stable floor. I'm disgusted to know either of you. Get up. When Goyle obeyed, Harry stood as well. Draco hissed out a couple of charms, and Goyle and Harry were clean and vaguely presentable once more. What is wrong with you two? Draco asked. He started it, muttered Goyle. I'm sorry if I don't find Voldemort trying to kill me again that funny, Draco, Harry snarled. That isn't something to joke about, Draco said, paling. Draco in a stable was still sort of weird and wonderful, even without the subject matter. Let's work, Harry suggested, and went back to shoveling disgusting, caustic straw. Peasant, Draco muttered. And proud of it, Harry confirmed. It's not Voldemort, Draco added, poking at a lump of horse dung with a fork as if he'd never done an honest hour's work in his life. Sure it is, Harry retorted happily, pleased to have someone he could tell who wouldn't worry about him. I had a vision and everything. He's got a horrible long-term plan. You. Draco ran a harried hand through his hair, knocking it into an odd state of disarray. Harry thought about telling Draco he looked a lot better when he wasn't so pressed, and then decided that was crazy talk. I have to tell my father, Draco said. Why wouldn't he know? He spent a lot of time, effort, and money convincing everyone he hated, you know. Mine too, Goyle grunted. How do you think he's going to feel about that? Not warm and cuddly, if he's back. He might be a little ticked about your dad getting his old diary stabbed with a basilisk fang, Harry added, because Draco panicking was funny. Oh, and about the dead basilisk. His 16-year-old ghost seemed pretty attached to the old girl. Your life is absurd, Draco informed him distractedly, with a look of introspective horror. Goyle was frowning, too, though he wasn't using it as an excuse to avoid shoveling dung. Harry decided to concentrate on detention for a change. Draco fell into step next to Harry 2.5 days later, expression very neutral. Here, read it. Dear Draco. The information about him was very useful to my planning. If Potter seems willing to share more details, it would behoove you to spend more time with him. A revival of early attempts at friendship would not go amiss in the interest of keeping an eye on the situation. I remain your loving father. Your dad, Harry said slowly, wants you to pretend to be my friend for information. Everyone else in the school hates me, Harry continues, and your dad wants us to be friends. The entirety of Slytherin is going to want to kill you, Harry added helpfully. Hufflepuff, too, and Gryffindor's going to try to kill me. You could say no to this nonsensical idea, Draco added with faint hope. Oh no, I'm not giving up someone who has to put up with me, Harry said with relish. But you've got to leave the bodyguards behind. Draco's silence was magical. We can work on Quidditch, Harry offered. We wouldn't have to actually talk to each other that way. So that was what they did. They set a snitch loose and night after night took turns catching it. Harry won 4 times out of 5 and tricked Draco into scrubbing his own mouth out with soap. At which point it turned out Draco was willing to hex him to his face, and they got detention again. It became something of a pattern, since Harry and Draco couldn't actually spend more than half an hour together without starting a fight, and Harry was feeling angry enough with the world that it precisely suited his mood. In another reality, Draco came up with the idea to make insulting charmed badges for the school to wear. In this reality, Draco was busy hexing Harry's teeth. Madame Pomfrey was not impressed. Professors Snape and McGonagall were not impressed. Really, no one was impressed. Chapter 50. Forbidden Homosexual Love. Didn't think you and Malfoy were close, Moody commented. Considering. We're not, Harry said. His dad wants him to keep an eye on me. And you let him. I mostly like the part where I hex him, Harry admitted. Might want to work on that temper, boy, Moody told him. Could get you into trouble. Yeah, I guess. It'll give you both practice with constant vigilance. And that, apparently, was that. Harry wished that Professor Snape being his tutor meant Professor Snape was less likely to poison him. But the one time he dared to suggest this as a teaching method, Professor Snape asked if Harry was asking permission to be careless, and Harry decided to drop the subject forever. Rita Skeeter's smile widened. Harry counted 3 gold teeth. She reached again into her crocodile bag and drew out a long acid-green quill and a roll of parchment, which she stretched out between them on a crate of Mrs. Scour's all-purpose magical mess remover. She put the tip of the green quill into her mouth, sucked it for a moment with apparent relish, then placed it upright on the parchment where it stood balanced on its point, quivering slightly. Testing. My name is Rita Skeeter, Daily Prophet Reporter. Harry looked down quickly at the quill. The moment Rita Skeeter had spoken, the green quill had started to scribble, skidding across the parchment. Attractive blonde Rita Skeeter, 43, whose savage quill has punctured many inflated reputations. Lovely, said Rita Skeeter, yet again, and she ripped the top piece of parchment off, crumpled it up, and stuffed it into her handbag. Now she leaned toward Harry and said, So, Harry, what made you decide to enter the Triwizard Tournament? Said Harry again, but he was distracted by the quill. Even though he wasn't speaking, it was dashing across the parchment, and in its wake he could make out a fresh sentence. An ugly scar, souvenir of a tragic past, disfigures the otherwise charming face of Harry Potter, whose eyes ignore the quill, Harry, said Rita Skeeter firmly. Reluctantly, Harry looked up at her instead. Now, why did you decide to enter the tournament, Harry? I didn't, said Harry. I don't know how my name got into the Goblet of Fire. I didn't put it in there. Rita Skeeter raised one heavily penciled eyebrow. Come now, Harry, there's no need to be scared of getting into trouble. We all know you shouldn't really have entered at all. But don't worry about that. Our readers love a rebel. It was at this point that Harry decided he didn't like her. Candy, he offered, pulling a bag out of one of his extra pockets. He studied them in the dimness, looked like calming chocolates. That'd work, even if he'd prefer the raspberry ones for her. No, thank you, Harry. About the tournament. Are you sure? They're really very nice. The headmaster always says every situation's better with candy. The headmaster did not always say this, but Harry kept the bag of chocolates helpfully outstretched until Miss Skeeter took one between 2 fingers and popped it into her mouth. She got the interview back on track, so to speak, after that, but her questions were not quite so rushed, and Harry felt a little less overwhelmed than he might have. So he offered Dumbledore a chocolate too, which he accepted with a knowing twinkle, and went on to offer them around to everyone at the wand weighing. Harry did not feel guilty at all about the whole thing going smoothly and calmly, everyone mellow as marshmallows in summer. He needed a bit of peace and quiet in his life. Rita Skeeter even moved slowly enough that Harry escaped most of the time with the photographer. One of the secondary headlines about Harry in the paper that had Draco passing it to him, wordlessly, during potions read, Rivals in luck. The rivalry between Draco Malfoy and Harry Potter is well known both on and off the Quidditch pitch, and it's even been speculated that Mr. Malfoy has aspirations towards a certain brunette. He is known to object strongly to Potter's relationship with Hermione Granger. Harry could think of absolutely nothing to say. Draco's comment later, when they were hovering in midair over the Hogwarts lawn, was, You didn't catch it, did you? Catch what? Our implied forbidden, homosexual love. Harry's grip slipped on his broom, and he held on wildly with his knees. Darn, Draco said mildly. I was hoping you'd fall off. Your sense of humor, Isval. She said I had feelings for a certain brunette, Draco explained. If my father wouldn't have her out of a job within a day, I bet she would have gone further. About our forbidden homosexual love, Harry said flatly. That's right. Shut up and play, Malfoy, Harry said. He really didn't want to think about it. Chapter 51. Conversations Between Curses. Draco and Harry both got kicked out of the library after getting into a shouting match about who got to borrow the last copy of 500 counter curses across the ages. Why not do this with Crabbe and Goyle? Harry asked, sometime after it became clear to both of them that their habit of dueling at every opportunity had become a real habit, and not just something they did when they were angry. They'd started to get the knack for when certain corridors didn't have other students and teachers around to get caught in the crossfire. You have the best reflexes in the school, Therislow. Did you just give me a compliment, Malfoy? You're still terrible at Quidditch, Potter. Don't let it go to your head. I don't think those two go together. You catch the snitch by fainting, falling off your broom, breaking your arm, or catching it in your teeth. It's not my fault your good choice in brooms and weird luck disguise your lack of actual ability. Harry hit him with the strongest disarming spell he could because he'd gotten his breath back. Draco responded by changing shape and darting into the shadows behind a statue. Uruhite, Harry pointed out, and got Draco with a tickling jinx as he darted from one bit of cover to another. Why are you really doing this? Harry asked Draco, offering him a dose of healing potion for the blossoming bruises. They'd made the mistake of talking during today's fight, and it had dissolved into a flurry of fists and hair-pulling Harry was never, ever admitting to. Harry could admit that neither of them thought clearly when they started talking about families. Oh, I realized last spring that I don't want you to die. So you're helping me learn to duel. Only as a side effect, I'm going to convert you. You want me to be a Death Eater, me. Look at it from my point of view. My point of view is that he murdered my parents, and I still hear my mother begging for mercy in my dreams. Draco was silent for a moment, then shrugged. You never knew your parents, really. They're an idea to you, Yaunome and Professor Snape. Draco gave him a direct, eerie look. You think I haven't been paying attention to how much time he spends tutoring you? It's just potions, Harry muttered. He hates me. But you don't hate him. You practically worship at his feet. Draco jerked his chin up and met Harry's eyes. I'm not going to push. There's no rush. Harry wished wistfully for a couple years ago, when Draco's idea of a cunning master plan was tricking Harry into getting detention and losing house points. What a sweet, innocent time that had been. If you're so interested in learning dark magic and curses, why do you never try to hit me with Crucio or something? Are you saying you want me to? No, I just want to know why not. It's not my style. I think you're right, but I didn't think you thought so. If I told my father, he'd treat it as a horrible weakness, but I've decided it's a strength to know how I want to approach things. Power's all about being able to do what you want, and if what I want is to do things without any messiness, why shouldn't I? Draco sounded rather defiant. Harry tried to figure out how to handle this declaration of purpose. You could be a healer or something, and not fight anyone. Don't be stupid. Chapter 52. Ron hates the Yule Ball. The first task came around before Harry realized it. Draco had been keeping him busy, what with them trying to turn each other into armchairs, and it was dragons. A letter from Sirius suggested he concentrate on his strengths, and mentioned he'd tracked down who Bertha Jorkins had been, a ministry witch murdered in Albania. Harry was more determined than ever to succeed at the first task, or at least not die, when Sirius confirmed that he'd made arrangements about number 12. I may not be able to be there, have to keep moving, but we'll see. Can't put details in a letter. Harry had a persistent vision of running away to number 12 before the holidays to hide from the dragons, but without an adult wizard there, he suspected he'd just end up getting cursed again, and visions of sarcasm danced in his head. He faced the dragon and survived, and it was good. Things were back to normal with Ron, and somehow that meant without much discussion that things were back to normal with Draco. Draco didn't seek him out, and pale eyes didn't veer sideways, indicating a side hallway they could duel in anymore. Harry was surprised to miss it, but he'd missed Ron more. Harry had a nasty shock when he realized the Yule Ball meant he was expected to stay at Hogwarts for Christmas. The first Christmas he actually wanted to go someplace else, he thought resentfully. He wrote to Sirius and received reassurances that things could still go ahead over spring break, assuming his champion duties allowed. Being a champion was a pain. And then, the day after the Yule Ball was announced, Draco Malfoy approached Hermione as they were leaving potions and bowed politely. "Miss Granger, may I have a word?" Hermione looked at him strangely, but nodded. "Privately. As if we'd let you take Hermione off someplace to Hex," Ron said hotly. Draco smiled thinly. "Very well. Miss Granger, would you do me the great honor of accompanying me to the Yule Ball?" Harry choked, so did Ron. Hermione said, "You know you'd have to touch me to go to the ball with me, don't you?" "Yes," Draco said, mild as milk. "I'm aware." "You don't like him, do you?" she asked in dawning horror. Draco's eyes half-lidded. "You're a very pretty girl, and anyone would be lucky to have you attend with them." Now, everyone who knew Draco Malfoy knew he was lying, but it was at this point that Ron put his foot in it. "Everyone knows you'd never ask Hermione, and she's going with me, aren't you, Hermione?" "Thank you, Draco," she said very coolly. "I'd be happy to go to the ball with you, since you were nice enough, Tosk." To put it vehemently, Ron was not happy. Draco, on the other hand, seemed quite smug about the newspaper headlines that followed this invitation. After one too many strident objections from Ron, Hermione said, "Honestly, he's been much better this year, and Harry's friends with him. I'm sure we'll find something to talk about. He must be quite good at transfiguration to be an animagus, and I've been thinking about working out my own transformation." "You're friends with Malfoy?" Ron asked Harry. "I thought you were just putting me on because you were cross." Harry said eloquently. At which point Ron decided the only way out was to throw himself bodily into the lake, and Harry had to talk very quickly indeed to get Ron to snap out of it. "And how does the second task progress?" Snape asked in the first week of Christmas break. Harry tried to look innocent. "Issy," Snape said very precisely. "Look, you're not allowed to help." "No, I am not. I am, however, not forbidden from making your life miserable until you make progress. Life is full of little surprises, is it not?" Harry scowled at him. "The contact poison will take 48 hours to work. Either make your own antidote or make progress on your puzzle, Mr. Potter." Harry really hated him. "You're not allowed to murder students." "Oh, it won't kill you," Snape said quite cheerfully. The day before the Yule Ball, Harry took it upon himself to tag along with Ron, Fred, and George, who cornered Draco before dinner. "Right," Ron gave Draco the evil eye. "This may be some horrible joke for you, but you are going to be nice about it tomorrow and treat Hermione like a lady, or we will make the rest of your life at school hell." Draco, who was vastly outnumbered, shifted uncomfortably, gaze darting between them, shifted into a cat, and bolted without shame. "Hello, Harry," Draco said, when Hermione had gone off to dance with Victor Crumb, and Draco was following their path through the crowd with hooded, pale eyes. Harry, who had been abandoned by poverty, looked awkward. Hello, Draco. Enjoying yourself?" "Sure, you." "Surprisingly well. She cleans up nicely, doesn't she?" Harry studied Draco, who was still watching Hermione and Crumb. "No," Harry said flatly. "I'm sorry." "No, you don't know." "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." "Aren't you supposed to have some sort of moral objection to dating Hermione?" Harry asked, desperately. Only if I was serious, Draco said absently. A little bit of fun is understandable, and it does make Weasley make the best faces. Lighten up, Harry. Your face will stick that way. Harry grabbed Draco's arm, and Draco shook him off. You're going to catch people's attention, Draco murmured. Stop being ridiculous. I'm not going to hurt her. Harry growled in the back of his throat. I'm going to listen patiently some more while she explains about the plight of house elves and how muggles are very clever for visiting the moon. The only person in danger will be being bored to death. Since this at least sounded like Draco was still draconed, not someone using polyjuice for some arcane reason, Harry drifted away, staying close enough to keep a weather eye on the pair throughout the evening. Hermione ended up spending quite a bit of time dancing with other people, which was something he supposed. But somehow Harry still ended up standing with Ron bemoaning life, the universe, and everything. I reckon he's slipped something into the water so everyone likes him, Ron opined about Draco. Harry nodded glumly. It's really the only explanation. Don't worry, Harry, Ron said seriously. I'll save you both. Thanks, Ron. You're a true friend. They fled into the rose garden, where they overheard an interesting, ominous conversation between Snape and Karkaroff. By the end of Christmas break, Harry had been poisoned 5 different ways, made 23 different possible antidotes, and figured out progressively that the egg was speaking a magical language, specifically, after an antidote that turned him blue mermish. He was also very grateful for Cedric's hint, which may have saved his dignity, if not his life. Harry would really have preferred not to have the motivation. The papers seemed quite full of Harry and Draco's fictitious fight over Hermione after the Christmas break, including a number of technically accurate but very misleading quotes from Draco himself. What's wrong with you? Harry hissed at Care of Magical Creatures class. Just playing to the narrative, Draco murmured. By the way, the other option was Hagrid being half-giant. I suggest you give Miss Skeeter a proper interview before she works her way around to it. For some reason, she doesn't like you. I can't say I like her much, either. Like my father says, we're not allowed to kill reporters, so we must live with them. Chapter 53, Second Task Montage. I am researching potions for breathing underwater for reasons completely unrelated to the second task, Harry informed Professor Snape, dragging a large pile of library books into the potions lab. Remind me to teach you how Tolly at some point, his professor said, watching this. Water-breathing potions are quite beyond you, but you might as well make the attempt. This turned out to be entirely accurate. Harry's first water-breathing potion left Harry unable to breathe water aura, until his professor eventually took pity on him and provided an antidote. The second and third didn't go much better. It was a work in progress. Professor Snape kept giving him pitying looks as if Harry was missing the obvious, but seemed in no hurry to enlighten him at all. Harry rather thought Professor Snape didn't care very much if Harry won. Draco Malfoy kept turning up to ask Hermione to study with him in the library, turning Ron an interesting splotchy red color. She refused to go on any actual dates with him, but Draco didn't seem to object. One day, when Harry, Ron, and Hermione had been joined by Draco again, and Harry was trying to figure out whether or not he was angry, Greg Goyle came over and sat down next to Draco, and Draco turned to stare at him. What are you doing here, Greg? We're friends with them now. Greg, no. Aren't we? Draco appeared actually truly speechless. Harry leaned his chin in one hand and watched it with delighted interest. We'll talk about it later, Draco settled on finally. Talk about what? Greg asked. Talk about, oh, Merlin. Talk about what, Malfoy? Asked Ron, who was still just barely civil with Draco in the same room. This isn't happening to me, Draco said quietly. It's all a horrible dream, and I'll wake up soon. Honestly, said Hermione tartly. Goyle, Greg, would you like help with charms? I know you have trouble with them. Sure, Goyle said agreeably. Harry shared a horrified look with Draco. This was just not right somehow. Crabbe appeared to be trying to murder Harry with his eyes from across the library, and Harry had a horrible sinking feeling. Oh, well. Want some peppermints, Goyle? Harry asked. If Harry had a better hold on his temper, he might have given Rita Skeeter an interview and not ended up shouting at her in a pub. Oh, well. Hey, Hermione, she said, chewing on a quill. What do you actually like to do? I mean, I know you like to read, and you're good at all the classes, but you're good at all the classes. I like potions, and Ron likes chess. Do you want to be a librarian, do you reckon? Well, there's nothing wrong with being a librarian, of course. It's a hallowed and challenging profession, but no. I think I'd like to do something about the ministry. They really don't think about other species, like the house elves and the centaurs and the goblins. Harry nodded. I think someone should do something about that too, he said. But I don't think I can do that and a potions mastery at the same time. So I'll just have to help you with it. About time, she said teasingly. I wouldn't mind the newspaper articles saying Hermione Granger's friend Harry every now and then. Harry visualized this and grinned. That would be pretty great. Harry would probably have enjoyed meeting mermaids more under other circumstances. When Harry confronted Professor Snape after the second task about the entirely fictitious water-breathing potion he'd been working on, Professor Snape just smiled at him. Your obligation is to compete, not to win. In any case, you wanted to learn the wolfsbane, did you not? The first steps are the same. Harry was torn between anger and despair, and ended up sitting down and laughing into his hands. You're never going to be a regular sort of teacher, are you? No, I never am. And you were a Death Eater. I heard you talking to Karkaroff. You do have a habit of eavesdropping. I wish they'd make this elaborate plot to kill me a little less elaborate. I'm tired. One thing, Potter. Where did you get the gillyweed? Harry froze. Where had Abby gotten the gillyweed from? One of my friends gave it to me, Harry said with absolute truth. Right before the task, I didn't ask where they got it. Harry shot him a wary look. Did your friend also give you boomslang skin earlier this year? No, that's for polyjuice. You know what I'm like at brewing polyjuice. Harry had tried making some last term and managed to ruin a near-perfect batch on the 27th day. His professor's silence had been eloquent. If any of your other little friends think it's a good idea to steal from me, do disabuse them of the notion, or I will. One night, as winter was turning to spring, Hermione lured Draco into discussing his animagus transformation. The meditation to find the form took the longest time. The ritual itself wasn't that hard, but I almost lost it midway through, which would have meant ending up a real cat, not a wizard that was cat-shaped, you know. I did it here at school, which was a mistake in retrospect. Greg helped. I watched, Greg agreed. Professor McGonagall said that if I even hinted to other students that they should try it unsupervised, she'd turn me into a stone statue and leave me that way, Draco added. So I won't say that Granger could probably pull it off, and the rest of you would probably die horribly. Hermione blushed. Talking to Sirius about the whole problem at Hogsmeade weekend in March didn't help Harry figure it all out, but it certainly helped him get a better grasp of the situation. Everyone but Harry and Hermione seemed pretty sure that Snape could easily be behind things, which left Harry feeling off kilter and strange. Wouldn't he know if his teacher was really out to kill him? He didn't say anything about stuff Snape had said to him privately because it felt wrong, and it left him with nothing he could say about the man. Maybe Snape was just under an obligation to teach potions, and it wasn't about Harry at all. I've worked things out with Dumbledore for Easter holidays, Sirius told Harry in an undertone. Here, read this. 12 Grimmauld Place is the headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix. What's the Order of the Phoenix? Harry asked. Old name for something Dumbledore organizes. Easy way to say people he trusts, which is important. He was thinking about asking me for the use of the house already, so when I asked him for help with a Fidelius, well, it all worked out. I'll keep an eye on you for the halls, Sirius added hopefully, unless you change your mind about wanting to see the old place. I've been back, and it's just as bad as I remember. I'm sure it's awesome, Harry assured him with all the fervor in his heart. Once you get rid of the most obviously evil stuff, I mean. We'll be working on that, Sirius promised him. Too bad you won't be able to do it by spell with the trace and all, but I'm sure we'll manage. Which gave Harry an idea. Professor. Concentrate, Potter. But, Professor, do you want to lose another batch to your carelessness? Harry was silent and frustrated through wrapping up his antidote, and only once it was jarred did he say, Potions masters take apprentices, don't they? To help them and to learn things. They do. Have you ever? Number teaching at Hogwarts has been my occupation. But would you ever? If you complete your 7 years of study successfully, there are masters I can recommend you to. That really had not been what Harry wanted to hear, but he bit back a comment to that effect. Potter, his professor said, and hesitated. If you survive to graduate, I may well be tired enough to retire at the end of that time. Harry snorted and moved on to cleaning up from his potion. Chapter 54, Interlude, Why Draco and Harry Stopped Dueling. Rewind, if you will, to shortly after the Yule Ball. Petrificus Totalus, get his feet, Derby. Which is how Harry ended up carried, paralyzed, through the hallways to the hospital wing by a Derby who paused every now and then to try to pull his own ears off, and Ron, who did not bother to explain where they were going. Harry would rather have gotten his clothes on first, that's all he's saying. Upon explaining to Madame Pomfrey that Harry was definitely under a curse to spend time around Draco Malfoy, and being assured by Madame Pomfrey that Harry's aura was completely normal for Harry, Ron slumped at the head of Harry's hospital bed, Derby sitting disconsolately at the foot. But Harry, if you're actually spending time around Malfoy, why? Harry mumbled something. What was that? I think he's, Harry mumbled the rest. I just want you to be honest, Ron said miserably. Right, said Harry, for whom being really honest was a foreign country he liked to visit sometimes. I don't know, Ron. I don't go looking for him, he just keeps turning up. I reckon, Ron said slowly. He's got you a little turned around because he used to act really awful, and now he only acts sort of awful. And you feel sorry for him because Slytherin doesn't like him so much this year, and you know what that's like, being alone at the head of the crowd. This was such an accurate summation of Harry's feelings about Draco that he stared at Ron in some consternation. He forgot, sometimes, that Ron was better at certain things than he was like explaining people, when Ron took the time to do it. You forgot he's evil, Ron summarized, and Harry grinned. And that was usual Ron, reassuring as ever. Professor Snape's pretty evil too, Harry said cheerfully. Serious, too, I think, or at least he was raised quite evil. His first suggestion for the dragon task was a nasty curse. Did I tell you about that? It just goes to show that you can be raised quite evil and not turn out that bad. Sort of evil-flavored, not rotten. Derby said firmly, Master Draco is bad. How bad? Harry asked, dreading the answer. He is shouting and throwing things and being cruel to animals, Derby said firmly. He is not liking anyone but his friends and is not thinking they are worth anything. Harry nodded. Derby is not understanding why Harry Potter is liking him. I wish Hermione were here, Harry muttered. Right, I might be crazy, but this year it seems like he's been acting less like a spoiled brat and more like a person. Derby looked doubtful. Harry looked doubtfully back. Mate, I think we all know it must be rotten for any kid being raised by Draco's dad, but you can't save everyone, Ron said with finality. Harry sighed and flopped back on his pillow. At this moment, Madame Pomfrey interrupted. Mr. Potter, I am quite busy, you know. Yes, Madame Pomfrey. So I've just been to get a teacher, since you seem certain you need extra practice with curses outside of class. Professor Moody, you're sure you can take care of this? Absolutely, Professor Moody said, giving all three of them a hairy eyeball. Potter, Weasley, I was expecting Malfoy. Darby disappeared, with a pop. I thought Malfoy might be cursed Harry to want to be his friend, Ron said. But Madame Pomfrey said not. He's not cursed, Moody said. Just a soft touch. Detention with me, Potter, and Malfoy for unauthorized dueling. Harry nodded, quite intimidated. Detention, as assigned by Moody and done under Hagrid's supervision, was very terrifying, involving the Forbidden Forest and collecting baby spiders. Lots and lots of baby spiders. We are never dueling someplace anyone can catch yous ever again, Draco hissed to Harry after a particularly blood-curdling chase scene where Draco had been treed like a cat and actually had to fight back against the spider horde. Harry, who hadn't actually been that scared, put on his best sympathetic face. The problem was that Draco wouldn't change his mind, no matter how Harry hinted that wouldn't Draco enjoy running for his life while Harry practiced his aim some more. For some reason, Draco didn't find it compelling. Chapter 55, only a little like kidnapping. Harry held his breath when Professor McGonagall went around with the list of students staying for Easter holidays, and he didn't put his name down, but she didn't appear to think anything of it. He didn't want to answer any questions about it, since Sirius was still technically an escaped convict, even if the Ministry was making absolutely no effort to catch him. His conversations with Hermione on the subject had been pithy. The next step was a little more fraught. He waited until Draco had finished dinner and left alone, and slipped out of the great hall after him. Draco turned, giving him a cool look. Do you still have that? A first-year wandered past, and Harry paused. Fake wand. Yes, as it happens. Get it from an adult wizard, did you? Again, yes. Can I borrow it? If I may borrow your cloak sometime. Harry frowned. I thought not, Draco said with a nod. Yes, Harry said, trying not to think too hard about it. Draco gave him a very considering stare. Harry shrugged. I'll have it for you tomorrow. Harry was going to stay in a wizard's house with a wand without the trace. It did not particularly matter to Harry that the wand did not like Harry very much. Instead of bright red and orange sparks, purple drips of light fell lazily from the wand when he tried it. Lazy was a good way to describe the wand's apparent personality. It would do what you wanted, sort of, eventually, if you shouted loud enough and really concentrated, but it was nothing like the light, fiery feeling of using his own holly wand. Harry told none of his friends about his Easter plans on serious, quiet instruction. Instead, he packed his bag after everyone had gone to bed, with things for the week and a few assorted bits of this and that barely fit in his trunk. His bag, which was somewhat extended these days, held everything without a mutter. Harry and his invisibility cloak made it onto the train just before departure, and he spent his time lurking awkwardly in the train corridor. It was good practice, he told himself bracingly, for stealth, even if it did feel a little silly. Harry slipped into the loo of the Muggle side of King's Cross and came out visible again, and lurked, awkwardly. Hello, Harry, said a quiet voice, almost lost in the bustle of the Muggle train station. Harry looked around and stopped dead. Professor Lupin. I told you to call me Remus, his old professor said, still tired and careworn, but with a small smile on his face. I thought. Harry glanced around. What are you doing here? Picking you up, Lupin, Remus smiled. Padfoot's still talking me into bad ideas, it turns out. This is a wonderful idea, Harry protested. Come along, Sirius tells me you know about cars and things. We can get a taxi, Harry offered. Sirius will be delighted, Lupin said half seriously. In the taxi, Remus gave Harry a calm look and said, "So, how did Sirius talk you into this one?" "I talked him into it," Harry said firmly. "I wanted to go to a real house for the holidays, just in case I die in the tournament." "Which is very similar to what he said to me," Remus said with a sigh. "But you do realize we're kidnapping you, don't you?" Harry looked blank. "I'm going home for the holidays with my godfather. That's not kidnapping. He's still an escaped prisoner." "Not very escaped. And Dumbledore still takes your safety very seriously. The only reason I went along with this was that I knew Sirius do it without me, at which point there'd be no one to watch your backs." Harry gave Remus a somewhat severe look. "Did my dad ever tell you it was his job to make you have fun? Because it seems like something someone should tell you. We're going to dealing with a whole house full of horrible cursed artifacts and creatures. It's going to be wizard." Remus seemed overwhelmed by this argument, and Harry settled back in his seat, satisfied. "Want a chocolate?" Harry added. "I made them." "Certainly," Remus said politely. Remus spent the rest of the taxi ride napping, which was good, because he seemed like he very much needed a nap. Number 12 was still dingy and awful. The main difference was that the portrait of Sirius, Mother, had a curtain over it, which Harry approved of entirely, and Creature didn't get the door. Instead, Remus let them in and said with a sigh, "If you don't mind, Harry, I think I'm going to lie down for a while. Sirius should be around somewhere. He said he'd be taking his temper out on one of the nests in the drawing room." Harry nodded thoughtfully and tried to pretend he didn't know where the drawing room was. Harry proceeded to have the best 2 weeks of his life, bar none. Sirius was very good company, of the aggressive sort, and they had lots of tales about his father. Creature was sulking, and Harry didn't see him much at all, which left Harry master of the kitchen. On the first evening, Harry was sitting around a table with Sirius and Remus having left them entirely to their own devices all day. "I want to be rested in case of emergency, not run around joining in this bad idea." When Harry remembered his main planned contribution to the cause. "Are you sure I can't do magic?" he asked Sirius. "Not worth the potential hassle," Sirius said. "And it builds character or something," he added, with a somewhat guilty look at Remus. Remus had a certain expression on his face whenever Sirius gave Harry advice. "Well, I made this at school," Harry said. "It doesn't count as doing magic here." He pulled a pale blue flask out of his bag and poured it slowly on a patch of dust on the floor. Soapsuds dripped from the flask to the floor, slowly, until a little pile the size of a small dog had accumulated. It blinked open bright blue eyes and purred, blowing bubbles at them. Harry said, "It's not actually supposed to." The soap bubble pile purred louder and motored around the floor. In its wake, it left a path of shiny, polished wood. Sirius broke down laughing. "Do you think it's dangerous?" Remus asked, hiding his expression behind a glass of water. "It's just a scrubbing bubbles potion," Harry said faintly. "It's just supposed to clean a surface until it's done cleaning." "Never heard of it," Sirius said. "We can always banish it if it causes trouble." It turned out that the pile of animate soap did not cause much trouble, as long as it was fed adequate amounts of water. It chased dirt all over the house, turned out to do a pretty good polishing effect, and seemed to be in no hurry to disperse. "I think I put in too much magic," Harry said numbly, as his soap bubble creation chased Creature down the upstairs hallway a couple days later. "This is the best thing I've seen in years," Sirius said. "So, what's his name?" "Well," Harry said, "it purrs. Her name could be Kitten." "Kitten it is," Sirius agreed. And that, somehow, was that. Chapter 56, Harry's Room. Sirius and Harry de-infested Harry's chosen room on the fourth day, and Sirius repaired the broken windowpane and turned the faded velvet curtains a firm red trimmed with gold to make Harry feel at home. Left alone in his room later, Harry very cautiously put a couple of his books on the newly empty shelves and propped up a couple pictures of his parents and Ron and Hermione. Then, after a few minutes staring at this feeling odd, Harry went and got a couple forks and knives from the kitchen and transfigured them firmly into picture frames with Draco's stolen wand. It took a few tries, but he ended up with reasonable-looking silver frames and a wall that actually showed that Harry had been here and existed. For the next half a day, Harry waited cautiously for an owl arriving, telling him he was doomed, but nothing came for whatever reason, definitely better than staying with the Dursleys. Remus maintained his careful neutrality on the subject of reclaiming the house from dirt, creature, and evil portraits, and mostly spent his time sitting at the dining room table sipping tea and reading the paper. Sirius was more active, but every now and then he'd just break something, and Harry would have to pause and stare at him. "Doesn't it bother you?" Sirius asked abruptly, after he'd torn a screaming portrait off the wall. "Doesn't what bother me?" This house, it's saturated in darkness. Don't you feel it?" Harry considered this. "A bit. I suppose I just thought that was how it felt. It's just sort of a whisper, isn't it? It doesn't take much concentration to ignore. Like a Dementor or something." Sirius scowled at the portrait on the floor. "I suppose it'd be worse for you," Harry allowed. "Sorry." "No," Sirius said. "This helps. Building new memories, ones that haven't been drained, it helps. It's just sometimes I need to break things." "All right," Harry said agreeably. "Let's find the worst stuff in here and destroy it into tiny pieces." So that's what they did. Harry and Sirius opened the door to the library and peered inside. It was still filthy, since Kitten hadn't broken down any doors as of yet, and dark, and there were cabinets off things. "Let's not," Harry said abruptly. "I never liked books that much anyway." "They're mostly full of curses," Sirius agreed. "We should go bother Remus." They never did get around to dealing with the library that visit. "Harry," Remus said, "what are you and Sirius planning today?" "We're tackling the potions lab. We think if we deal with the things making the clicking sound and the ingredients that are fermented and prone to explode, I can do the rest myself and reclaim it." Remus trailed off. "Be careful of him, please. He loses track of what year it is sometimes, and you look so much like James. I don't want him to forget you're not an adult wizard he's known all his life who can take care of himself. He's supposed to take care of you." Harry thought this was a charmingly naive statement about adults in relationship to himself, Harry Potter, but he liked Remus and was too polite to say so. "He said it was helping to build new memories," Harry offered. "Good, that's good." "Don't worry," Harry said firmly. "I'm always careful." Remus gave him a somewhat condescending and adult look, but since Remus of the three of them was the one who was consistently adult all the time, Harry forgave him. After all, Remus was watching their back when he could have reported them to Dumbledore or someone who didn't think fighting dark nuisances for days was fun. 2 weeks passed far too quickly. Harry stole a chest to put at the foot of his bed from the room next door and completely failed to finish dealing with all the weird stuff in the upstairs potions lab. Chapter 57, A Wizard's Education. Harry was discovered on the train back to Hogwarts by a prefect tripping over him, but since he was supposed to be on the train, they couldn't exactly take points off. He slunk into a compartment full of strangers and endured curious looks at the Harry Potter. Hermione had somehow developed a reputation as a man-eating siren, which Harry found frankly weird. She was apparently the sought-after bride of him, Draco, Neville, Crumb, and a few other boys besides, and Harry just wanted to stick his hands in his pockets and go, "I could never date someone who likes books better than me." But he didn't say that, because she was his best friend, and it would just be taking his temper out on people. Never before had going to Hogwarts felt like leaving home to Harry. He wasn't sure he liked it, and he was wary of disturbing his wards by thinking too much about things like home. He wasn't sure what would muck with them and what wouldn't, and it left him trying to police his own thoughts. Missed you at Easter, Potter, Moody said. Went home to visit my family, Harry said, avoiding his gaze. Moody had been an aura. It just didn't seem sensible to tell him about visiting his escaped convict godfather. Moody grunted. I don't like muggles, Greg said to Hermione one evening. Why not? She asked in reply. He frowned. If they were gone, we'd have more stuff. If they were gone, we wouldn't have food or roads or trains, Hermione said tartly. Not everything can be made by wizards. Greg fell silent, and everyone moved on with studying, assuming it had gotten lost somewhere in his head. You're a muggle, Greg said to Hermione after a while. I like you. I'm muggle-born, Hermione said, and thanks. Greg, Draco said sharply, and Greg fell silent, staring vaguely at the book he'd been holding for the past half hour. Oh, why do you even pretend? You're not even trying, Hermione said, grabbing the book out of his hands. Don't know how to read, Greg said proudly. You what? Well, a little, he admitted. Greg's father thinks reading rots the brain, Draco explained dryly. A good wizard learns by memorization and oral tradition. It's too bad Greg's no good at memorizing things either. Hermione sputtered quite a lot after that. A few days later, Hermione asked Draco, is it really true that there's no standard wizard preparation for Hogwarts? Of course not. Magic's not standard, is it? Hermione stared at him. I had a few different tutors, Draco explained. How do muggles do it? You go to school, said Harry, every year except summers. Same as Hogwarts, only for reading and maths. Sounds dreadful, was Draco's opinion. Though I suppose it would spare one from lectures on how things have gone downhill since we started writing spells down. Harry and Hermione exchanged horrified looks. Chocolate, Harry said, since Draco looked like he was about to start screaming at Crabbe, and that would disrupt Potions class. If I have to tell you one more time not to bring food to class, Mr. Potter, Snape interrupted in his very best form, I shall hang you upside down and shake you. Why do you constantly offer people candy? Draco asked later as they left class. You aren't going to be a shopkeeper, you know. I could be a shopkeeper. Nothing wrong with being a shopkeeper. It sounds peaceful. I'm serious. Why? You ever not had enough to eat? Draco looked at him blankly. Candy makes me happy, Harry said. And Harry didn't see a reason it had to be more complicated than that. Despite Professor Snape being moderately helpful about Harry for once doing the right thing and running right to the headmaster with a problem, namely Mr. Crouch talking to trees, they did not reach the forest in time to prevent Mr. Crouch's disappearance. Chapter 58, Taking Sides. Having another vision of Voldemort did not endear Harry's scar to him one bit, and talking it over in more detail with Dumbledore, and then Sirius, Ron, and Hermione did not help. They just didn't have enough information, any way they turned it around. Professor Snape was not interested in speculating, since he'd gotten it into his head that Harry would complete a successful batch of Polyjuice before the end of term, and it was not going particularly well. Harry wanted to ask if Snape would be happy if Harry died, because he'd been distracted by brooding Polyjuice like a chicken, but ended up staying quiet. It just didn't seem diplomatic. Harry did comment when their last lesson before the third task was a lightning round of making a scarily precise batch of healing potion, though. Harry looked at the neat silver flask full of potion, etched with a snake, and said, I'm going to be fine. Then you will spare Madame Pomfrey a small amount of labor, Professor Snape said. Harry fought his way through the maze and got his leg ripped open by a giant spider, at which point Harry was very grateful to have a spot of healing potion to glug down surreptitiously, while Cedric looked at the golden cup. It made him feel a little better about what he felt was not a very strong showing at the task. Cedric died. Harry wished he'd said proper goodbyes to his friends and his family and his teachers, just in case. Lord Voldemort was alive. They dueled. Harry took Cedric home. Harry felt very numb while confronting Moody and being interviewed by Dumbledore and Sirius. "He'll be fine," said Madame Pomfrey, giving Harry some pajamas and pulling screens around him. He took off his robes, pulled on the pajamas, and got into bed. Ron, Hermione, Bill, Mrs. Weasley, and the black dog came around the screen and settled themselves in chairs on either side of him. Ron and Hermione were looking at him almost cautiously, as though scared of him. "All right," he told them. "Just tired." Mrs. Weasley's eyes filled with tears as she smoothed his bed covers unnecessarily. "I need to talk to Draco," Harry said abruptly. "I have something to say to him." Ron and Hermione exchanged anxious glances, and Ron got up and left the room. Madame Pomfrey had compelled Harry to drink a dreamless sleep potion by the time Draco turned up. His pale face shone oddly in Harry's muzzy vision. Harry grabbed his sleeve and tugged Draco down so he was less wavering and far away. "You don't have to tell your father," Harry informed him. "He already knows." Sirius growled. "You'd better go," said Hermione. "You'll forgive me, Dumbledore, but I've never heard of a curse scar acting as an alarm bell before." "Look, I saw Voldemort come back," Harry shouted. He tried to get out of bed again, but Mrs. Weasley forced him back. "I saw the Death Eaters. I can give you their names." And he hesitated, and behind the minister Snape shook his head once. Harry paused, and it gave Fudge time to say, "I've trusted you a great deal this year, Dumbledore, and what do I have to show for it? Nothing but chaos and disorder. I've had enough, do you hear? It seems to me that you are all determined to start a panic that will destabilize everything we have worked for these last 13 years. It turned out that when one was a semi-accepted escaped felon, it was quite easy for one to become a most wanted escaped felon again. All it really took was reassigning the case to a different pair of auras." Draco avoided Harry, and Harry was happy to let him. He kept remembering Lucius Malfoy's smooth professions of loyalty whenever he looked at blonde hair. Snape was at Harry's bedside, looking like death, eyes fever-bright and full of murder. "Harry," he said, watching Harry's face carefully, "would you come with me now if I asked you to, if I said it was important?" Harry put his hand on his wand, trying as hard as he could to read this man who he still didn't know, even after years of teaching and learning and hating. And "No," Harry said, and prayed it was the right answer. "I don't think I will, thanks." Professor Snape did not smile. "I will see you when term resumes, Harry." Harry fell back against his pillow and wished he didn't think Harry was code for "do nothing I say." Hermione had just finished explaining about Rita Skeeter being an animagus when the door of the train compartment opened and Draco and Greg appeared in the doorway. Under the circumstances, Harry wasn't sorry about drawing his wand. "Jumpy Potter?" Draco asked softly. Harry said nothing. "Well, I'd like a word. Greg can stay here as assurance to your friends of my good behavior." Which led to Harry standing in a train corridor, looking at Draco with very mixed feelings. Draco lifted his chin and met Harry's eyes, expression exceptionally unreadable. "I have a favor to ask." "Depends on the favor. Do you know someplace Greg could go for the summer?" Because Thedark Lord, Draco caught himself and took a breath. "Because Greg's an idiot. Because he's my idiot. No sense of subterfuge, no sense. He thinks you're his friend, he thinks." "He sort of is my friend," Harry admitted, not sure how that happened. "His father is my father only without the wit and charm," Draco said flatly. "If he thinks Greg is disgracing the family name, he will kill him. So, do you know someplace Greg can stay this summer?" Harry went quiet for a minute. Draco's father thought murdering 11-year-olds with cursed objects was a reasonable thing to do. Mr. Goyle and Mr. Malfoy had both watched while Harry was tortured, and Voldemort set out to murder him slowly. "Why didn't you ask Dumbledore? He wouldn't get between a pureblood sire and his heir." He wouldn't care about Greg. As if he'd do anything to draw the Dark Lord's ire right now. Harry frowned, thinking. He couldn't exactly pay for a room at an inn all summer or put Greg up at the Dursleys. He'd have to stay at Sirius Place, but he'd have Tarstay, the location's secret. Are you sure? I'm sure. You know Greg by now. He changes his mind about once every 10 years. Harry had to admit that sounded about right. And you? Draco smiled very thinly, pale eyes hooded. My father and Greg's father share politics, not intelligence or child-rearing habits. I'll be fine. Of all my friends, Draco purred, I'm the only one who can say their father or guardian has never hit them. Happy. Harry winced and didn't argue. Draco, Voldemort. Oh, don't. Honestly, I'd prefer to stay out of it, if I could. But you know I can't, Harry. I can't. There was something raw and honest and awful in Draco's pale eyes, and Harry looked away, thinking about Cedric and Lucius Malfoy and— Right, Harry said thickly. Well, I'll take care of Greg for you. Thank you, Draco said formally. I appreciate it. He'll be all right to come back to Hogwarts in the fall. No one can take a child out of Hogwarts, Draco confirmed. Right, Harry said again. Harry sent an owl to Sirius from the train and didn't say a word about it to Hermione or Ron. What did he want? Ron asked. To say we weren't friends anymore. What with his dad wanting to murder me, Harry said, staring out the window. Which rather killed the conversation. Fred, George, wait a moment. The twins turned. Harry pulled open his trunk and drew out his Triwizard winnings. Take it, he said, and he thrust the sack into George's hands. What? Said Fred, looking flabbergasted. Take it, Harry repeated firmly. I don't want it. You're mental, said George, trying to push it back at Harry. No, I'm not, said Harry. You take it and get inventing. It's for the joke shop. He is mental, Fred said in an almost awed voice. Listen, said Harry firmly. If you don't take it, I'm throwing it down the drain. If we win the war and survive and everything, I'm going to want a job, Harry said, thinking it up as he went along. And you've been doing a good job selling my candy so far. It'd be nice if there was a joke shop waiting for me to work there after I'm done at Hogwarts. A black dog was sitting by a taxi outside King's Cross and gave Harry a serious look. Harry nodded and told his uncle, 1 minute. He grabbed Greg's arm and said into his ear, Go with the dog. Do whatever he tells you. Greg nodded, looking like nothing so much as a giant thunderstorm, and followed Sirius obediently into the crowd. This, Harry thought faintly, was doing nothing for Harry's nerves. Chapter 59, Interlude, Veritaserum. Greg sat quietly in the chair where he'd been told to sit and looked around as best he could without seeming to look around. The group that had assembled around him seemed to have an awful lot of redheads in it. Weasleys. That made sense, since this was Dumbledore's lot. There was also the dog Animagus everyone called Sirius. Greg wasn't sure if that was a pun or not. Everyone seemed to want to talk to him in quiet tones so that Greg wouldn't overhear. Greg was not in a hurry to eavesdrop, so that was all right. What is so urgent that you summon me? Said a vicious, familiar voice. Greg smiled. Hello, Professor. Professor Snape stared at him as if Greg was a bug. That was okay. Greg was used to it. Mr. Goyle, did you get lost? No, sir. Do you know where you are? Goyle had to think about this one. He was not precisely sure. Professor Snape pinched the bridge of his nose and looked like he had a headache. Greg got that a lot. I assume he is. The reason I was asked to bring Veritaserum. Sirius just brought him, confirmed one of the redheads. But we don't know why or if he's a spy or what. Sirius says it was Harry's idea. Professor Snape shot Sirius a look of intense dislike. Greg was glad he wasn't the one getting that look. Very well. Professor Snape took the glass on the table, filled it with water, and added a number of drops of clear liquid. Drink, boy, and pray you are not here as a spy. I imagine there would be nothing left of you if anyone attempted a memory charm. Greg drank the truth serum and felt almost exactly the same. Does anyone object to me asking the questions? Professor Snape said, eyeing Greg. He is mine to watch, 10 months out of the year. Go ahead, said Sirius, pulling up another chair and sitting in it backwards. But I've got a few of my own when you're done. Greg waited patiently. Professor Snape sat down too. Why are you here, Mr. Goyle? I followed the dog. Why did you follow the dog? Harry told me to. Why did Harry tell you to? Draco asked him to. Professor Snape took a breath. Very well. Why did Draco ask him to do that? I don't know. Please speculate, Mr. Goyle. I don't understand. What's speculate? Did Draco say why he was asking Harry to? Did Draco say what he was asking Harry to do? What was he asking Harry to do? Find me a place to stay for the summer. Because of my dad. Professor Snape did not immediately ask another question, but Greg did not feel like talking more about his dad. He didn't like talking about his dad. Explain, as best you can, the events that led you to be sitting in that chair, Mr. Goyle. Draco made friends with Harry in first year. Then I decided in fourth year that if Draco was going to spend all his time with Harry, I should be friends with Harry too, because Draco was my friend. Then Hermione explained that Muggles had been to the moon and we shouldn't kill them, and I promised her I wouldn't. Then I told Draco about that, and he told me I was going to get myself killed. Then the Dark Lord returned. Then Draco said he wouldn't let me get myself killed and to shut up and let him think. Then he talked to Harry about it on the train. Then Harry said I should obey a dog. Then I followed the dog. Then the dog told me to sit in the chair. The dogman Sirius was grinning in a weird way, and the redheads were talking a lot. The part about Hermione's true, sir, said Ron. Greg had missed Ron in all the redheads. I was there for the part where she explained about them sending men to the moon by using giant fireworks. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about this, so Greg took a moment to look around. He looked down under the table. There's soap eating your shoe, he told his professor. Professor Snape peered under the table too. The soap had blue eyes and was covering both of Professor Snape's feet. That's Harry's scrubbing bubbles, said Sirius in a choked voice. I think it likes you. After that, Professor Snape put his hands over his face for a while. Do you like Harry? Asked Sirius. Do you always answer questions with as few words as possible? Greg had to think about this one for a while. Mr. Goyle is known, said Professor Snape distantly, for being a bully, an idiot, and a follower of Draco Malfoy. None of which explains this. Yes, it does, Greg says, since truth serum didn't stop him from talking if he wanted to. It does, asked Professor Snape. Yes, Greg paused and said slowly, in case Professor Snape had a headache and was having trouble with words the way Greg sometimes did. Draco S on Harry's side. This is Harry's side. Draco Malfoy, Snape said very slowly, is on Harry's side. Greg nodded. He considered and added thoughtfully, he lies a lot. Yes, it is apparent that he does. Are you certain? Oh, don't cry, Snivelus, said Sirius, grinning some more. I'm pretty sure this is good news. Is there any particular reason Draco Malfoy thinks he can lie to the Dark Lord? Snape said abruptly. He's good at occlumency, been studying it all year. Being good's not enough when it comes to... Professor Snape stopped short, closing his eyes. Were there any other questions you wanted to ask before I administer an antidote? He asked Sirius, not looking at him. What would you like to happen now? Asked Sirius. Dinner, said Greg promptly. Sirius broke down into cackling, mad laughter. Chapter 60, V. Letters to Harry. Severus Snape sharpened his quill and began to write. Dear Mr. Potter, Your recent failure at creating a tolerable cleaning potion has been brought to my attention. As a related matter, you owe me a new pair of shoes in the amount of 3 galleons. Severus, said Lucius Malfoy, we are trying to hold a meeting. Must you engage in correspondence? Has the Dark Lord graced us with his presence yet? Then I have time to address a problem. I have been unable to duplicate this error and require an account of how you created the potion and what unusual measures you may have included. What has you so very focused? Asked Lucius. Potter has created an abomination against the potion's art, and I cannot understand how he did it. I am going to strangle him until the little miscreant coughs up what he did wrong. I think, said Lord Voldemort's light, amused voice, we have more pressing reasons to strangle Harry Potter. May I see this letter? Severus stood and handed it over with a bow. A cleaning potion, Severus. Severus bowed low. I do not often encounter a new problem in potions, my lord, he said, glancing up and meeting his master's eyes. He let the need Tano slide to the forefront of his mind. Ever the scholar, Severus. His master handed the letter back, and Severus folded it and tucked it away to finish later. To work, gentlemen, Lord Voldemort said. A prompt reply is requested. Severus Snape. Dear Harry, we are not supposed to write details in old letters. Yours sincerely, Gregory Goyle. Dear Harry, I know I've said it before, but chin up, things are moving along, and I think I've got it worked out now. You're not supposed to know about the place we'll meet, so I won't describe it. It's not dusty. Dear Harry, did you have to send him? He's decided Hermione's his new best friend. Sorry, letter got interrupted. He asked Hermione to go on a date with him. Don't know what's wrong with him, but it's something major. Now Hermione's mad at me, because I said something was wrong with him when I just meant. You know what I meant. Now she said she's going to teach him to read. No more news than you've got about the important stuff, but hopefully they'll let you come soon. Not used to dealing with him for this long without someone to keep me from punching him. F and G just egg me on. Your friend. Dear Harry, I've enclosed my notes about the summer reading assignments. Looking forward to seeing you.